In the small town of Everbrook, nestled between rolling green hills and crystal-clear lakes, kindness was once abundant. Neighbors knew each other by name, doors remained unlocked, and the town square was always alive with the chatter of friendly voices. But as time went on, the world outside changed, people became busier, more distracted, and the warmth that once defined Everbrook began to fade. It wasn't that the people had become unkind, they had just become too preoccupied with their own lives. Smiles were exchanged less frequently, conversations became shorter, and the simple acts of generosity that once bound the town together grew rarer. One chilly autumn morning, an elderly man named Thomas sat on a bench in the town square, feeding the pigeons as he did every day. He had lived in Everbrook for over 70 years and had seen it transform from a place of warmth and connection to a town where people passed by each other without a second glance. He sighed, watching as people hurried past him, their faces buried in their phones or lost in thought. That was when he noticed a young boy, no older than 10, struggling to carry a large bag of groceries. The bag was too heavy for his small frame, and as he took another step, the weight of it finally won and the bag tore, sending apples rolling across the pavement. No one seemed to notice. People stepped around the scattered fruit, too caught up in their own worlds to stop. Thomas, however, did not hesitate. With slow but steady movements, he knelt down and began gathering the apples, placing them back in what remained of the torn bag. The boy, eyes wide with surprise, joined him. "Thank you, sir," the child said shyly, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Thomas smiled warmly and asked, "Where's your home, son? Let me help you carry the rest." The boy hesitated for a moment before nodding. As they walked, Thomas learned that the boy's name was Ethan and that he lived with his mother, who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. When they arrived at his small house, Ethan's mother, a woman in her early 30s with tired eyes but a kind smile, was startled to see an old man standing beside her son. Thomas explained what had happened, and she thanked him profusely, apologizing for the trouble. But Thomas waved off her concern. "It's no trouble at all," he said. "I remember when neighbors used to look out for each other. It's what made this town special." Ethan's mother, Emily, smiled wistfully. "It used to be like that, didn't it?" she said. "But now, everyone is so busy trying to get by." Thomas nodded, understanding her struggle. He had been young once, raising his own children in this very town, when kindness had been a way of life rather than an afterthought. Before leaving, he handed Ethan a small wooden coin from his pocket. "This is something my father gave me when I was a boy," he said. "He told me it was a token of kindness and that whenever I received kindness, I should pass it on." That night, Ethan held the wooden coin tightly in his hand, thinking about what Thomas had said. The next morning, as he walked to school, he saw his classmate Lily sitting alone on the steps, wiping tears from her eyes. He hesitated but then remembered Thomas's words. "Are you okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. Lily sniffled and shook her head. "I lost my lunch money, and I don't want to tell my mom because she works so hard." Ethan reached into his pocket, feeling the wooden coin. He knew what he had to do. He took out a crumpled dollar bill he had been saving for a treat after school and placed it in her hand. "Here, you can have mine," he said. "And take this." He handed her the wooden coin. "It's a kindness coin. If someone is kind to you, you have to pass it on." Lily's eyes brightened. "Really?" she asked, gripping the coin tightly. Ethan nodded, smiling. That afternoon, Lily spotted their teacher, Mrs. Carter, struggling with a heavy stack of books. Remembering the kindness Ethan had shown her, she rushed forward to help. "Let me carry these for you," she said. Mrs. Carter, surprised but grateful, handed her the books and smiled warmly. "Thank you, Lily. That was very kind of you." Later that evening, Mrs. Carter stopped by the local cafe to pick up a cup of coffee after a long day. The barista, Jacob, looked exhausted. His shift had been overwhelming, and he barely had time to catch his breath. Noticing his weariness, Mrs. Carter left an extra tip along with a small note, "You are appreciated. Thank you for your hard work." Jacob found the note as he cleaned the counter and felt a surge of warmth. That night, as he walked home, he saw his neighbor, an elderly woman named Margaret, struggling to carry her groceries up the stairs. Without hesitation, he rushed to help. And so, the ripple of kindness continued. The wooden coin passed from one hand to another, but more importantly, the spirit of kindness spread through Everbrook. People began to slow down, to notice one another again. Smiles became more frequent, conversations grew longer, and the town began to feel like home once more. All because one old man stopped to help a boy pick up some fallen apples. Months later, Thomas sat on his usual bench in the town square, watching as a young woman helped an elderly man across the street, as a teenager held the door open for a mother with a stroller, as two children laughed while sharing a snack. He smiled to himself, feeling the warmth of what he had always known to be true kindness, no matter how small, always comes back.